But from my perspective, actually, resolution of uncertainty is the most important factor. So we think those things are going to coalesce. You also have rising global liquidity from central banks. That has started to change. I think we're set up for a very strong Q4, particularly as we get toward the November election and beyond. We think the crypto market is entering another major bull market period. I know it doesn't feel like that right now. We're all, sad about September. We've been chopping sideways since March. People are worried about the political outcome. But from our point of view, the sort of 4-year cycle is still intact. There's a lot to be excited about in crypto. Now is the time, to stake your position and grow aggressively.
One of the key issues that markets detest is uncertainty. For the better part of the year, investors have faced immense uncertainty regarding Federal Reserve rate cuts. While today we may be debating between a 25 or 50 basis point cut, not too long ago, the future of interest rates was clouded in speculation. Federal Reserve governors were even toying with the idea of raising rates further. With clarity emerging around rate cuts, the markets can begin to breathe easier. Political uncertainty also looms large. While the focus is often on who will win the upcoming election and its impact on policy, Hougan believes that the mere resolution of uncertainty regardless of the outcome will benefit markets. Whether it's the Fed's decisions or the election, knowing what comes next will bring stability. This is particularly critical for the crypto market, which thrives on stability and predictability, even if such predictability comes in the form of regulations. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
From my perspective, the thing that markets hate more than anything else is uncertainty. And we've been dealing around huge uncertainty around the direction and timing of Fed rate cuts. I know we're all now in this 25 or 50 basis point camp and rate cuts are a fait accompli, but it wasn't that long ago that we were wondering when Powell and company would decide it's time to move into rate cuts. And it wasn't that long ago that Fed governors were speculating on rates going up another 25 basis points. So the resolution of uncertainty around rate cuts and the scope of those rate cuts, and then the resolution of uncertainty around the election. Again, I know people are worried, Trump, Harris, what will it mean, etc. But from my perspective, actually, resolution of uncertainty is the most important factor. So we think those things are going to coalesce. You also have rising global liquidity from central banks. That has started to change. I think we're set up for a very strong Q4, particularly as we get toward the November election and beyond. We think the crypto market is entering another major bull market period. I know it doesn't feel like that right now. We're all, sad about September. We've been chopping sideways since March. People are worried about the political outcome. But from our point of view, the sort of 4-year cycle is still intact. There's a lot to be excited about in crypto. Now is the time, to stake your position and grow aggressively. And that's what you're seeing from Bitwise in those acquisitions. It's also what you're seeing in our sort of distribution strategies on our core products. And we're really excited for the next, couple years and what it will mean for Bitwise and for the industry. They were trying to say there isn't institutional adoption of these ETFs because mostly these ETFs are owned by retail investors. The point I was making was even if you excluded all the retail money that came in and just looked at the institutional money, they would be the most successful ETFs of all time by a huge factor. So, it is true that retail investors are buying Bitcoin ETFs. That's great. This is one of the best, cheapest ways to get exposure to Bitcoin that exists. It's very familiar, particularly to older generations who are more used to brokerage accounts than they are to wallets or apps. Great. But that doesn't mean that institutions aren't buying them as well. I come from an ETF background. The thing I love about ETFs is that little old me can own the same exact product as the Harvard endowment.
Mm.
And we can both own it for our own reasons, getting the same deal. That's all that's happening here. My, father is buying the ETF, and the state of Wisconsin is buying the ETF.
Right.
And that's the rising tide. And I think flows are going to reaccelerate in Q4. And I think flows in 2025 will be higher than 2024. That I would rather the ETF for ETH launched later. I think it would have been more successful if it launched in 2025, just because the investors we talk to, who are professional investors, are still getting their hands around Bitcoin.
Right.
I know that sounds goofy to people on this podcast, right? Because the idea that you're still getting your hands around Bitcoin, but that's where most people are. They're going 0 to 1. And then to complicate the story and talk to them about, Turing complete blockchains and applications built on blockchain, it's just a lot. So these ETFs have actually been pretty successful from my perspective. We have a couple $100 million in our ETF. That's a top, 2 or 3% ETF launch. That's pretty good. We'll take it. But I think they will build over time. I also think more than Bitcoin, Ethereum is wrestling with this election uncertainty. Bitcoin has kind of gotten through the regulatory hurdle. There's not much that regulators can do to harm Bitcoin. There's still uncertainty on ETH. Remember, the SEC and the CFTC have different views. DeFi and other ecosystems built around Ethereum have a great deal of regulatory exposure. So I think I'd be surprised to see ETH rally until we get sort of to the election or beyond and we see what the Harris campaign positions itself on crypto. I just think there's more uncertainty in that market. My view on those tokenized products, really exciting, is that those are serving a crypto native industry. Those are serving people who are actually crypto native but need fund exposure. Like they're serving hedge funds who want to monetize their cash over the weekend. They're serving other crypto traders that are crypto native. So I actually think the demand for these tokenized products for the next 2 years plus is going to come from crypto and not from traditional investors. And I think that's great. So I'm very bullish on that space. I'll have to think about whether it makes sense to package those in ETFs. But I do think there's going to be a convergence between these tokenized real world asset products and the traditional markets. I think the demand is coming from crypto, not from the traditional markets, and therefore it's fine to be in a crypto native package.
One of the main hurdles for the crypto market, particularly in the US, has been navigating the regulatory environment. While the SEC has rejected a number of Bitcoin ETF applications in the past, Hougan remains optimistic. He likens the current situation to the years-long battle for Bitcoin ETF, which were eventually approved. Bitwise, Hougan notes, has always relied on data-driven submissions to the SEC, and the firm is working hard to demonstrate that the underlying crypto markets are protected from manipulation. Hougan points out that Europe offers much more clarity. In Europe, there are clear rules about which crypto assets can be listed as ETP, and European regulators are more willing to work with the industry. This level of regulatory clarity is a relief for companies like Bitwise, and Hougan hopes that the US market will soon catch up.
Analyzing what the SEC has said, they sort of summarily rejected the first 2 applications. That doesn't mean the door is closed. Remember, Bitcoin ETFs were rejected for 10 years, and it was worth the wait. So we are doing a lot of work on the underlying markets around protections against market manipulation and how to demonstrate that through data. Bitwise has always led with data in its SEC filings. We've always, for better or worse, submitted like 200, 300 pages of data with every filing that we make. We're very excited about the Solana ecosystem. We think it's robust. So we're doing the work on that and on certain other assets. The timing of when we're filing them, it just depends on how fast we get through that work and what we find. Look, we've entered the ETF era of crypto. It's much harder to go from 0 to 1 than it is to go from 1 to 100 in anything, but also in ETFs. It's going to take regulatory changes, maybe changes in the direction of how the SEC thinks about this market. But there are a number of robust assets that deserve ETPs, in my view. In Europe, you see these ETPs helping investors get safe, low-cost exposure to these assets. I think we're going to get there in the US. So, yeah, stack up the pillows behind your right shoulder. We're working on them. It's such a relief. It's unbelievable to go from this, hazy US regulatory market into Europe, where there are clearly things you can do and clearly things that you cannot do, right? There are certain crypto assets that you can't list ETPs on, but there are a wide variety that you can. And just knowing that that's possible and knowing that the regulators will work with you is a tremendous relief. So whether that's in Switzerland, which is a booming crypto market, or the EU, where ETC Group has sort of pioneered access through Xetra in Germany, it is really wonderful to operate with a little bit more regulatory clarity. I hope it's a taste of what's coming here in the US. And if it is, I can tell you that it tastes pretty good.
For sure. Now, the other acquisition was Osprey's Bitcoin fund, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Osprey had a private Bitcoin fund, OBTC, and we're in the process of bringing that into our Bitcoin ETF. Assuming it's successful, it will be, it would be just a win-win. I think it should lower costs. It should provide continuity. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know if they fit into the Bitwise framework of the world, but I will say that, if you look at the broader ETF ecosystem, there are lots of ETFs that just exist as trading tools and are widely adopted and widely used. And if you can sort of answer this from two different viewpoints, right? You can have the fundamental critique of meme coins. But whatever, people want exposure to them.
Yeah.
Why not let them get exposure to them in a safe, secure, familiar ETF package where custody is handled and trading is understood and all of these things? I think, broadly speaking, I think that would be great. I don't know that Bitwise is going to be in that game, but I would be supportive of these ETFs existing. People are going to find exposure to these things one way or the other. And I would rather they do it on an ETF than they do it on FTX. Like that's just a positive trade for society. So, we'll look at it, we'll think about it, we'll see how that develops.
Hougan is confident that the ETF era of crypto is just beginning. It's always harder to go from 0 to 1 than it is to go from 1 to 100. And now that crypto ETF have been launched, the floodgates could soon open. However, Hougan also acknowledges that more regulatory changes are likely needed before we see broader adoption of these products. In Europe, ETFs are already helping investors gain low-cost exposure to crypto, and Hougan believes the US will eventually follow suit. As Hougan continues to analyze the global landscape, he remains bullish on the future of crypto, not just for retail investors but for institutions as well. Bitwise is positioning itself to lead in this space, and the firm's acquisition of Osprey's Bitcoin fund is another step toward expanding its offerings. Please like and subscribe my channel.